For some of us, today probably started exactly like yesterday,
Yeah.
and the day before that too.
Hmm.
Waking up, and you're already inside it. That painful, familiar loop of thought. It's the cruelest kind of alarm clock, really.
Yeah, that internal alarm. It sounds different for everyone, but the feeling underneath, it's identical.
Right.
Maybe for you, it's getting trapped fixating on some physical detail. The worry that your nose is, I don't know, repulsively proportioned.
Or something smaller, like a mole you're convinced is cancerous.
Yeah,
Endless searching, comparing photos.
exactly. Or maybe the loop is purely mental, like that constant nagging fear, maybe from 12 years ago, about some website you visited in college.
And the police are suddenly closing in, right, after all this time.
Yes, or replaying a simple joke you made to a colleague over and over until you're absolutely convinced it's triggered, like a formal disciplinary review that's going to just wreck your career.
It's amazing how varied they seem on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Plastic surgery, oncology, police surveillance techniques, employment law. Wildly different topics. But what's really extraordinary, as you said, is that they all seem to share these two deep, quite agonizing themes underneath.
Yeah, exactly. When you actually break them down, these fixations are either screaming that something appalling you feel you are, or maybe something you did, that's the problem. You're the culprit.
Right. You're unacceptable.
Or the opposite. Something appalling that others are about to do to you. You're the victim, caught in some kind of plot.
And this relentless mental affliction, this obsessive thinking, that's what we're digging into today.
Our mission, really, is to try and peer beneath the specific topic, whatever it is for you, unpack this pattern, and maybe uncover what we're truly running from.
Because, and this is key, what looks like really heavy thinking is often something else entirely. It's a brilliant defensive strategy, actually.
Okay, let's unpack that defense idea. Because if you watch someone who's really caught in one of these obsessive loops, they look like they're working incredibly hard mentally.
Oh, absolutely. Intense cognitive effort. Drawing up these dense flowcharts, maybe compiling complex legal precedents, jotting down intricate notes, mapping out every single worst-case scenario.
They dedicate themselves completely. It's like they become near-world experts in these incredibly specialized, often, frankly, irrelevant areas.
Right. If it's health stuff, they know the precise efficacy rates of post-op skin treatments in, 3 different countries.
Or if it's about feeling persecuted, they can recite the statute of limitations on obscure misdemeanors or detail the technical capabilities of commercial tracking devices. It's stunning, the level of detail.
They invest just enormous cognitive resources.
Yeah.
But, okay, here's where the deception comes in, right?
Right.
Because if someone is spending, say, 10 hours a day mastering surveillance law, surely they're still thinking, they're learning things. How do we draw that line and say, no, that isn't genuine thinking?
Yeah, that's the crucial distinction, isn't it? It's not about the quantity of knowledge they're gathering. It's about its application, its purpose. See, genuine thinking, real cognitive effort, it's usually about making progress. You move through a dilemma, you clear up a priority, you arrive at some kind of solution, or at least, a practical plan to get there.
Makes sense.
The obsessive thinker, though, despite all that extreme effort, they remain perfectly still. They never actually move forward. The charts get drawn, the notes get compiled, but the fear, it stays exactly the same, undiminished.
That distinction, knowledge acquisition versus actual application or forward motion, that feels really key.
Mm-hmm.
So if all that incredible intellectual energy isn't actually achieving anything productive, what is its function? What's the architecture of this mental trap?
Its function is, well, almost purely defensive.
Mhm.
And this gets us to that central, maybe even radical idea. We are thinking in order not to think.
Thinking in order not to think.
Exactly. The obsessive thought, the whole intricate structure around it, it's employed like a highly complex wall. It's designed specifically to ward off a different, deeper kind of thought.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful metaphor. It sounds a bit like meticulously organizing your sock drawer while the entire house is actually on fire behind you.
That's a great way to put it.
You look incredibly busy, focused even, but you're fundamentally avoiding the catastrophe.
Precisely. We use all the technical details of the obsession, the specific wording and employment law, the exact millimeter dimensions of the nose, whatever it is, to prevent ourselves from thinking more laterally, more emotionally about who we really are and maybe what's truly happened to us. It's an incredibly effective, though obviously exhausting, way to avoid that terrifying act of, well, knowing ourselves properly.
So the fixation itself is the distraction. The sheer volume and the complexity of the surface problem It's almost designed to drown out that quieter internal whisper of the real issue.
That's the idea.
Okay, if we accept that, then the next step feels quite personal, quite practical for anyone listening.
Hmm.
You should try maybe asking yourself this question.
Yep.
If you were suddenly somehow debarred from returning to your chosen obsessive topic, like if you simply couldn't draw on your nose anymore, or that old website visit, or what your colleague might have meant, what other thoughts might rush in to fill that immediate void?
That's the point where the system starts to shake, isn't it? And look, your mind probably won't just hand you a neat, tidy answer straight away.
No, probably not.
But we can hazard a pretty strong generalization based on this perspective about what's likely lurking underneath. The thoughts we work so hard to avoid, they're almost always related to intense, overwhelming feelings we feel we must prevent ourselves from actually experiencing.
And what are those foundational feelings, the really painful ones that are so threatening?
They tend to be quite primal, actually. If you could somehow remove that technical fixation, that obsessive layer, you'd almost certainly be forced to confront some pretty intense feelings of, well, sadness, profound loneliness, maybe desperation, or just feeling utterly bereft.
Wait, hold on though. Even if the current fixation seems relatively minor, like say, worrying if you forgot to lock the car or if your boss seems subtly angry today, are you suggesting that even behind those smaller, maybe more mundane loops, there's always this profound sadness or loneliness lurking? That feels a bit extreme.
It does sound extreme, I know. And that's because the current fixation is such a highly effective, modern-looking disguise. But if we follow the psychological thread back, really follow it back far enough, what we often find behind those monomaniacal preoccupations, the data packets, the legal processes, the endless social media checking, is something profoundly elemental.
Like an inner child. Is that the kind of territory we're talking about?
Yes, often metaphorically, that's exactly it. An extremely frightened, maybe isolated, perhaps unloved child who, way back when, simply could not bear to inhabit their own overwhelming experience. Those obsessive patterns, they get gripped, remorselessly to the walls of the mind, precisely to prevent a tragic re-encounter with that early, highly vulnerable, and deeply hurt version of the self.
So the fixation is like the technical shield. The modern shield we raise to protect that inner core from just collapsing.
That's a good way to think about it, yes.
So the current issue, the nose that feels wrong, the potential disciplinary action, it isn't really the problem at all. It's more like a highly specific, very detailed proxy for a much older, much heavier emotional pain that's been carefully locked away.
Exactly.
But why this form of defense? Why choose to worry about plots or personal inadequacy instead of just facing the sadness directly? Why this complicated route?
Well, the mind makes this desperate, usually unconscious choice for a very profound reason. We could call it the tragic function of obsession.
A tragic function.
The worry itself, whether it's that intense self-blame and guilt, the feeling I am unacceptable or the fear of external plots I am being persecuted, that worry is actually adopted to try and impose a degree of logic on an early experience that felt impossibly confusing, impossibly chaotic.
Because chaos is just unbearable, especially for a child. If you're young and the world is failing you somehow, if your caregiver is distant or maybe cruel, the sheer chaos of it just is this way or I'm just randomly powerless, that's terrifying in itself.
Exactly right. The human mind often prefers a painful explanation that offers some sense of control, even if it's illusory, over just incomprehensible chaos. It's a desperate kind of rationalization.
Right.
If something terrible is happening, maybe a fundamental failure of love or neglect or even betrayal, it can feel safer, paradoxically, and give that illusion of control to conclude, okay, it must be my fault. I must have done something wrong.
Because if it's my fault,
Then maybe if I can just fix myself, I can fix the situation.
wow. So the self-blame, or even believing you're being targeted by some plot, it actually provides structure where there was only psychological anarchy before.
Wow.
It helps rationalize that indigestible experience of, say, untrustworthiness or that failure of love you mentioned.
That's the connection we see. When you look at the bigger picture this way, you start to realize there's almost always been something much bigger, much older, and far more tragic lurking behind the current fixation. The obsession is just a symptom, really, of the mind still trying to solve the original, perhaps unsolvable problem from the past.
So what are some of those heavier, older truths that we might have been unable to look at? What are we actually defending against when we're obsessively checking social media replies or researching symptoms of a rare disease?
The truths are often quite heavy, as you say, formative experiences. Maybe, for instance, you were chronically maltreated by a caregiver who was perhaps emotionally unstable themselves.
Ah,
Or perhaps your parents consistently, chronically preferred a sibling, leaving you feeling perpetually irrelevant, unseen.
hmm.
Or maybe there was a deeper family pattern at play, like a father who repeatedly humiliated the child, perhaps as a way to overcome his own deep, unacknowledged shame, maybe even stemming from his own past abuse. These are significant wounds.
And instead of processing the sheer tragedy of that betrayal, that original wound, we end up fighting a kind of proxy war in the present.
Yes.
We fight the shape of our nose, we fight the colleague's casual comment, we fight the phantom arrest warrant. It becomes a battle, but it's one of our own choosing, almost designed to keep us occupied.
Precisely. And the goal of that specific battle isn't really resolution. It's simply to keep us busy enough to avoid confronting the older, more painful reality of having been deeply, perhaps tragically, let down.
Okay, so if the obsession is the symptom and not the disease itself, what's the path towards relief? How do we actually break these exhausting loops and start to reach that older truth? Because let's be honest, the mind is incredibly hardwired to return to those familiar charted waters of surveillance law or plastic surgery statistics.
It is. It feels safer there, ironically. The path involves daring, maybe for the first time, to risk not returning to our usual themes.
Stop.
We have to commit, really, to stopping the running. We need to pause right where we are and intentionally leave those secondary, those background thoughts and feelings some actual time and space to catch up with us.
So that means consciously putting down the fixation, closing the notebook, shutting down the browser tabs,
Yeah.
stepping away from the mirror.
Yes. And then allowing those waves of, well, background grief and fear to simply wash over us without immediately trying to suppress them or distract ourselves again.
That sounds, well, firstly counterintuitive, but also incredibly terrifying. Because presumably those feelings of deep sadness or loneliness were locked away for a lifetime for very good reason. They were too much to handle back then.
They absolutely were. That's why the defense was built in the first place. But now, potentially as an adult, they can be processed. The key is that they need to be correctly framed.
Framed how?
Relief starts to come when we can genuinely interpret our current preoccupations, the nose, the law, the plot, whatever it is, as symptoms of those other older concerns that we've been in flight from.
Ah, so seeing the obsession as the signpost, not the destination.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal then is to try and give up those consuming, often self-attacking feelings of persecution or unacceptability or guilt.
And what do we trade those feelings for? If we give them up, what fills the space?
We trade them for what we might call the sadder, slower, older truth about ourselves.
Sadder, slower, older truth.
We essentially trade the frantic, immediate anxiety of the obsession for the slow, quiet acknowledgement. I was very badly let down indeed.
That shift from I am bad or I am being targeted to I was deeply betrayed, that feels significant.
It's incredibly powerful because that interpretation finally allows the mind to become less consumed by the immediate, frantic, obsessive thoughts. The true threat is finally identified, it's placed correctly in the past, and it's beginning to be understood rather than just endlessly reacted to.
So this whole deep dive, it seems to have shown us that obsession isn't really a failure of logic at all. It's more like a highly articulate, albeit incredibly punishing, expression of a much older, unresolved wound.
The mind is like a brilliant, tireless defense lawyer, isn't it? But the cost of that defense is often our own peace of mind.
And this really raises an important question, maybe for you listening, especially if you're struggling with this kind of loop. What pattern stands out to you? Is your recurring thought loop primarily one of internal guilt and self-blame?
Or is it more focused on external plots and perceived persecution? Whichever pattern your particular obsession takes, the real bravery, the profound act of courage, lies not in researching the next technical detail of your fixation,
Right.
but in choosing, maybe just for a moment, to look backward towards the original source of the sorrow.
It really does take immense courage, doesn't it? To accept that you might have been deeply wronged, perhaps betrayed, and to allow that old grief to finally begin to run its course, rather than perpetually fighting these phantom enemies that just occupy your present moment. That acceptance, really, the courage to just stop running that feels like the final, maybe most crucial step towards finding some genuine peace.